Welcome to Shamanic Voices, a podcast aimed at bringing our ancient, indigenous Nordic wisdom traditions and perspectives, bringing these to bear on the challenges that we face in our modern world. I am your host, Georg, and we will often be joined by co-hosts, Laurie as our producer, and you can find our bi-monthly episodes on most major platforms. And if you enjoy this and like to read as well, please look up our blog with dozens of articles on health-related topics at www.teutonichealing.com. And now, let's get on with our show. Welcome to Shamanic Voices, where we attempt to apply our ancient wisdom of the Scandinavian wisdom traditions, which we refer to jointly as Fornsider, but you can think of it Suomoniskio or Asatru. We try to apply these insights, these ways of looking at things to our lives here in the modern world. And today our special guest again for our third part with her is Sonali, who's going to share with us her insights as to her life over the last 17 years as a targeted individual, a phenomenon which the more we dig, the more widespread it turns out to be. What say you about that, Sonali?
Yes, it's very comforting to know that people know about it. I'm not so isolated, so alone, so unique that people have no clue what's going on with me. So that has been the best part about finding out that this phenomenon has been documented for years and people are finally speaking up about it. I wrote down a few things today so that I'm not wandering off topic as I think of something new. So there are some things, some messages I want to give to your listeners about what they might see if they experience it and how to cope with it, as well as messages for the stalkers who are probably also going to be listening if they aren't listening already. Because we do have a time difference with India and Russia, so maybe if they're asleep right now, they'll see this in the morning, but they will. They track every activity of mine, especially online. They apparently are studying everything like science.
Yes, please share your insights.
To the people who are hurting me and others, I would like to say there are better ways of living. There are better ways of making money because apparently gang stalking took off as a profession because there was a lot of money to be made. Influence operations were raking in billions, if not millions, like the really big ones. They were making contracts go their way. They were making people make massive ideological changes simply because they had compromise on them. And they were holding entire families, entire clans hostage, bank accounts hostage. So that is the big money end of it. But this really is no way to live because in my case, this same group of people killed my grandma, stole all her property and her money. And they did the same thing to my dad. They told me in December of 2023 that I should be booking my tickets to come to India because my dad will die in 2 months. And I was like, don't gaslight me. My dad does yoga every day. He has an excellent cardiologist who tests everything possible every few weeks. And he is in good hands, very active, very, my dad was someone who was just full of life. And they said, no, pack your bags, you're coming to India. And sure enough, in about 6.5 weeks, my dad was hospitalized and he died a week later.
Wow. Do you think that they had some way of remotely influencing his physical decline to lead to his death? Or do you think
Yes,
had some inside information?
I believe they have the capacity to bring on physical ailments because they've been practicing on me with a variety of things. And several of my friends whom they contacted died very young. In their mid 40s, late 40s, they were dead. And reportedly, they attacked my cousin, who is a couple of years younger than me. And this happened a few years ago. And they were very excited that he was sick and in the hospital. So I do believe they can make people sick. Their most recent threat to me was if you even dare to go out on a date, we will make sure that you have explosive diarrhea as soon as you get there.
Wow.
So, yeah, that's my life. And they, every time for the last year and a half, 2 years, every time I go to the grocery store, there's at my alimentary canal. So while that 1 hour that I do leave the house every week, I'm miserable because I feel like I got to run to the bathroom.
Well, it sounds like if you go on a dating site, you just need to put on there looking for a man who's looking for a woman who has explosive diarrhea. There's probably somebody like that out there, you know? Probably a whole community of people who prefer that. I don't know.
We, there are so many weirdos out there who have found each other on the internet. These people have found each other on the internet by just checking people's Google search.
Wow.
Because they have access to search. They just go on search and look for people just like themselves.
You mean when they're looking for people to gang stalk, people to target?
Both.
This is how they find them? Okay.
I think it's both. And they have access to Android and iPhone, because iPhone is also trackable through certain apps. They also record every sound made within 10 or 20 feet of the phone, just like the Androids. Because in 2017, when I first started working in their office at Austin, Texas, they were quoting bits and pieces of my of conversations between my uncle and aunt who lived in Exeter, England.
Amazing. So they're very, very connected. Oh, you know, in going through all of this for the last 17 years, what is your secret? What has made you able to withstand? I mean, a lot of people I know are more fragile. If they went through all that you've been through, just the sense that somebody's watching them all the time and looking for a way to cause them pain or difficulty, a lot of people would have a nervous breakdown, or they would just dissociate. They would stop wanting to work or eat or anything. But you've kept right on ticking. You've kept right on going. You've kept your life as normal as possible. How do you do that?
In India, typically you grow up in an extended family and you typically have people working in your home. So we are very used to having no privacy at all. So I just decided I'm going to think of them as housemates and as servants as I had in India. And there is no such thing as privacy in India. Nobody has privacy. You either have people working in your home or the neighbors are coming in and out. You have cousins living with you. Their friends come in 10 at a time. Your friends walk in anytime they feel like, because we are a very informal society and homes are very close together. And it's just a tradition. In the morning, women visit each other and before the kids come home, because that's the only time they have to themselves. Like moms, the only time they have to themselves is just between lunch and when the kids come home. And once the kids come home, there's homework, and then they socialize as a family. And you always have help that either lives with you or is there 6 a.m. to 6 p.m. So there's always people watching you, whether you're eating or sleeping, you're being watched. So I just decided I'm going to reset to factory settings and just assume there's no privacy here.
Factory
The,
set. I like that term. Okay.
ugly part of that was that they installed cameras in the bathroom where my teenagers were also showering. So that was making me violently angry. So I had to calm my nervous system down on a daily basis. It wasn't just me. I'm old, I'm fat, I don't care.
Now, let me ask you this. So when they install these cameras in the showers, when your kids are teenagers, was this in the US? I guess it was, right?
Yes,
So
and
did you see these cameras sticking out of the wall or something, or in the light sockets? Or
what they told me was that don't bother looking for those cameras. They are in the walls. You'll never find them. And strangely enough, I had heard a lot of banging from the upstairs apartment before they installed it. And I got a flyer from their office, or ostensibly from the office. Please pardon our noise. We'll be working in the crawl space between your apartment and the one upstairs. And they slid it through the door in my apartment. So I was mentally prepped to be listening to a lot of noise from upstairs. I thought they were renovating the upstairs because the old tenants had moved out. I had no clue there was somebody in there installing cameras through the floor or the walls in the or through the crawl space until they told me. And by this time, I was starting to feel like I was going crazy, of course, with the rage, and there was nothing I could do about it. I told my kids that there are cameras everywhere, so think before you say or do anything. They are very desensitized to cameras because their dad used to do the same thing, which was why the marriage didn't last.
their
Because
dad, their dad used to put cameras in the bathroom to watch the kids?
he did
Why?
bedrooms, bathrooms, kitchen. Because I found out later on that he is a creeper.
A creeper. Okay, yes, that would be a word for somebody who does that. I can think of worse words, but yeah.
Yes. I threatened him. I told him I'll call the cops, so he totally backed off. But I realized the cameras didn't go away. So I kept telling him to turn them off, and he wouldn't. He was behaving himself between the threat and the next 5 years. He was behaving himself, but the cameras weren't gone. So he had just gone what's called underground. And I couldn't get help from my family because they were like, oh, he makes all this money. You're not even working. He's the smarter one in the family. You're the crazy one. Because typically in India, they don't want a marriage to break up. So I wasn't getting the help I needed from my family. I just had to keep asking friends until finally a friend from Austin said, I know what you're going through. I believe you. You can come stay with me. And we moved there. And then she tells me somebody told her that she has bipolar disorder. So one day she's screaming and breaking furniture and crockery. And the next day she's nice. Then again, she's screaming and breaking. So it was again a very crazy situation. So she said she would help me move into an apartment. She understood that her behavior was unsettling to my kids and me. And she rented an apartment for us until we had some money to pay for ourselves. So even though she has severe mental challenges, she was very kind. And she made it so that we at least had a roof over our heads. Only then my dad started being more supportive of us financially. And my husband was also sending money. So they were now supporting us financially, but they were still reserving the right to call me and the kids insane. They said, I'm insane, and the kids have inherited my insanity. So that double speak went on for a long time. For some reason or another, they really enjoy calling people insane. I wasn't the first person they did this to. I had an aunt who eventually killed herself because she was being put through the same system of humiliation and terror in India.
Well, it makes sense that if you are targeting somebody and you're afraid they will speak up, if you can get them labeled as insane or get people who associate with them thinking of them as potentially insane, then a lot of what you say is going to be discounted.
Yes. And I had kept in touch with my aunt just through a letter once a year and birthday greetings, New Year's greetings, and she was the sanest, sweetest person ever while she was being labeled insane by the family. She was a very high achiever. She had always excelled in her studies. She was second runner up at Miss India. She represented India at Miss Asia. And she helped her husband run the business, but something went wrong somewhere. And now suddenly people were under pressure to call her insane. And 5 years later, I found out she had killed herself. So I had that precedent in the family. And I made up my mind I would honor her memory and try my best to live out her unlived life. Because she was a perfectionist, a workaholic, extremely intelligent. Anything she did to perfection. Whether it was baking a cake, whether it was helping her husband with the business, she just was so methodical, very practical, very soft spoken. And I realized if she had just thrown some things at people and threatened them with police reports and just acted a little crazy at the right time, maybe people would have backed off. But she was too gentle for that. So I realized I would have to start going to the cops. But then, you know what I ran into? I ran into compromised cops. So I just kept going, talking to whoever would listen to me. So I had to talk to about 15 people before 3 people actually listened to me. And at that time, my immediate boss, or the head of the project, and he was my immediate boss. My immediate boss was different. The head of the Austin office, he is a veteran, very comfortable with technology. He went to MIT. He is a genius. That's just one of his personalities. This is a very flawed human being with 15 personalities, probably stemming from extreme childhood trauma. He doesn't talk about it. But if you see his personality, that's what it looks like. So he is an intuitive, and he's a mathematician and a veteran, and he has, those are his three personalities that are stellar. He has
That's,
another 12. He has another 12 personalities that probably belong in jail.
now, who is it belongs in jail? I'm sorry, I'm not following that part.
This is the same individual with about 15 personalities.
Okay,
And
15. Okay.
he was managing the Austin project, and the Russians were already in conflict with him because they wanted him to either work for them or they wanted to steal his idea. And this is someone who is tough, really, really tough, very smart. He has predatory tendencies himself, so he reads predators like a book. So I just lucked out with just the right boss. And he took on my case and decided to fight back for me. until I could fight back on my own. So he's really, really good. He's the kind of guy who's chatting with one person on Tinder, one on Grindr, one on Bumble, one on Facebook in the same coffee break.
Wow.
So he has mastered, mastered catfishing, mastered microtransactions,
I'm sorry,
mastered micro,
what is
micro,
catfishing?
oh, uh, convincing random strangers on dating apps that they've fallen in love and they want to be with you.
Oh, good God. Yeah.
Mastered it.
Oh,
So he had, he, all his skills were in play. And he managed the situation all by himself and his little group of friends. I've never met them, but they're all these MIT types, West Point MIT combination types. That is a kick-ass group of veterans. So I've come to the conclusion that veterans can turn things around if you just collaborate. So one of the things I say on my foghorn every time I can, please bring back veterans, retired police chiefs, retired Department of Public Safety people, retired hospital chiefs, fire chiefs, school superintendents, because you know the lay of the land, you know everyone in the community, you know how infrastructure works. All you need is some currently available top of the line technology to just connect you safely and to keep you safe. Because what has happened is that the Indians and the Russians and the Chinese have mapped out the genome of the entire US population. There's only 340 million of you. They know your name, they know where you live, they know your mother's maiden name, they know your allergies, they have complete control over your bank accounts, they have complete control over your health records. And now that these guys are at Google, they have complete control over what you see on your screen via Maps and Google. They can mess up your maps, they can mess up your search, they can mess up your history. And your health records, your pharmaceutical records are all in India. So that's the second thing on my foghorn all the time. Bring back all of that to US soil. You have enough people, if you just open up these jobs for part-time positions, grandparents, moms, high school students, college students, they can also work these jobs, and your data will be secure on US soil. Where would you find the office space? There's plenty of office space in the US that's vacant.
There's plenty of vacant office space throughout the country. That's right.
Yes.
More than enough.
And grandparents and moms and college students, high school students will be making a few extra bucks. That'll jumpstart the economy. The only glitch is multi-nation corporations are paying people $2 to $3 an hour in India and the Philippines and Ireland, if not maybe in Ireland, but in India, Philippines, wherever they're English speaking, third world countries where they're hiring people, they're paying like $2 or $3 an hour. Here, they have to pay a minimum of 15 an hour. And in a couple of years, probably people qualify for health benefits. That's an additional 5. To save those $12, they're putting America at risk. So if big tech, big pharma, big banks would simply bite the bullet, explain to their stakeholders, explain to their shareholders that for a while, the profits are going to go down because this is a massive threat to the entire American population, I think it can be done. It can be done overnight. Because these are very easy jobs. They already have these courses for customer service, and for billing and coding in the medical industry, they have them at community colleges. All they have to do is open up those courses to the public, maybe for free for a couple of years, and you will have the 1 million people you need to work those jobs within 6 months or less. So that is my big ask for the American people. Bring those jobs back. And about how I dealt with it, because I had a lot of time to think about the people I knew back in India who knew about this problem and had been sidelined. I realized very quickly it's a good cop versus bad cop problem. It's not an India versus America problem. It's a good cop versus bad cop problem. Because the bad cops were attacking my family and the good cops were trying to protect us. If that's the case in India, that's exactly probably what's happening in Russia. And I remember seeing somewhere on the news, I think, that at some point, Russia just told their hackers to stop attacking Russian companies and take their illegal activities across national boundaries. And if they just paid their taxes, Russia would turn a blind eye to the hacking activity. And that's how Russian hackers started attacking American companies and holding their websites hostage or their data hostage in exchange for ransom.
How do you know the difference between a good cop and a bad cop when you first meet them?
I have a sense of it because I grew up among cops. So if I hang out with them for like half an hour, I get a reasonably good idea of good cop versus bad cop. And very often you'll find that they're all good in the beginning, but when the bribes show up, some of them turn bad. So you have to give yourself some time, even when you're a targeted individual reporting to cops. Please understand that not everyone will help you right away because they know there's money to be made. If people like, stalkers are working at Google, they're probably making $500,000 a year. There's money to be made in bribes. So if a bribe shows up in the first few weeks, then they will turn against you. So as a targeted individual, be very, very aware that you will have to report this across multiple agencies, meet different people at those agencies, because you will only get help from a handful of people. Some of them will get terrorized, just like my detective was forced out of this investigation. That'll happen to many cops. They'll start terrorizing their families, they will have compromise on them, or maybe the bribe would work. So there are many ways gang stalkers attack law enforcement. And it would take a long time for information to trickle upwards. Even when information successfully trickles upwards because they look at the wires and they say everything you're telling them is true, only about 1 in 15 people is actually going to take you seriously enough to start paperwork. And of those people, only 1 out of 3 or 1 out of 5 is going to be able to see it through to the next stage.
I guess because you have to make sure you're working with people who can't be bought. And that sounds pretty rare.
That is only that is just 1/3 of the problem. There are many honest people, but there are also many people, even the honest ones, they don't want to risk their next promotion because somebody created a rumor about them. They don't want their children being terrorized at school. They don't want their pets to die. They don't want their cars vandalized because they have done all of that to me. Killed my pet, vandalized my car. All of that has happened. Terrorizing my children. All of that has happened. So I had to just stick with it. And I got very good advice from a couple of people right in the beginning. So my feed was being monitored by the FBI locally and probably at Washington, D.C., and probably at California, because they already had a case going on with my office. So they could see everything that was on my screen. One of them sent me a little note on my work feed saying, this guy that you're working with, we know he's problematic, but don't report him for misconduct. Keep working with him. Because by that time, they probably realized that the people in charge already had compromised, or they were being terrorized, or they'd taken a bribe. I don't know what happened there. They didn't give me the details of why I should keep working with this extremely flawed person. But there are 3 personalities of those 15 that are really likable. And I made up my mind I would keep working with him. And he was extremely supportive. He has been a large factor in this investigation. It's not like he hasn't done horrible things. He has. But you know how they say you have to set a thief to catch a thief? So he was the predator the US government needed in their fold in order to track and catch predators from other countries who are attacking us. He reads them like a book. And he has one of those work ethics. He never takes a day off, not even an hour off. And he has a group of people working with him who are just as smart, as committed as he is.
That sounds exhausting.
I know. So he had the mix. He's a very intuitive person, knows technology, has contacts in the military, and has skin in the game because the Russians were trying to steal his project. So, in that combination, it worked out. I could only think that there was a higher power organizing the craziness because it's impossible for a group of people of that caliber to be already present in a pre existing condition when I walked in there. So, I just accepted them for who they are and I worked with them. No judgment. So, that's another thing I have on my foghorn for Americans. Somebody's having an affair, if somebody is on Tinder and Grindr and open about it, please don't pass any judgment. We are the last generation to pass judgment on people who might be on Tinder and Grindr at the same time. But the younger crowd, like Gen Z, they just accept it as, oh, that's how he is. That's how she is. They pass absolutely no judgment. That's something we can learn from the younger generation. And I think churches will fill up again if we just stop that judgment. And I think Americans will be less critical of each other if we just stop that judgment. Because these people are operating purely on compromise. They have nothing else. Every time they blow up an investigation or they blow up a project, in my experience, it's always compromise. Maybe 10% of it is bribes, but it's a compromise that blows it up. So if you have people in your organization or in your investigation that have compromise, at least for now, just hold the judgment, just be supportive so they can function in their positions, keep doing the paperwork they need to do. At the Indian end of things, they have been studying colonization and they are in a rage over what happened 200 years ago with the British and 900 years ago with the Muslims, with the Mughals. Because India has been colonized twice, once by the Mughals for 700 years, and they only got rid of the Mughals because the British came in and edged out the Mughals. And they have been studying colonization, trying to work out what the Indian origins are, what Indian society was before we were colonized. And there's a whole bunch of rage surrounding colonization, which is misplaced because the people who colonized India are dead and gone. It's a little too late to be mad at the British people who are living in England now, or the people who live in Mongolia and Iran have descended from the people who colonized India. It's a little too late. They also have gone into translating ancient scripts, and they found out that India used to extend all the way to Tajikistan, and Burma, Indonesia were all part of the Indian culture. So now they're like rediscovering their past greatness before they were colonized. They're like, that's our land. So they're trying to develop, in my opinion, a colonial mindset because they believe that the tiny island of England ruled the world because they developed a colonial mindset. So what is happening now is that those of us who live in the West, we are being labeled as race traitors and as slaves of the white peoples with our minds still colonized because Americans are nothing but the children of the British. And our minds are so colonized by white people that we are reporting them when we should be keeping quiet and allowing them to ply their trade here through their mafia.
So it sounds like the people who have this us versus them attitude are creating this turmoil everywhere they go. And I mean, I think it's quite a story to say, you know, my great 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 grandparents owned this piece of dirt, therefore you can't stand here. I mean, that just doesn't work.
Exactly. Because it isn't just a piece of dirt. Families are living there. There are children going to school, there are moms cooking lunch. And in order to empty out those lands, just like Russia's, killing off Ukraine, they would have do the same. The reason they have bonded over cruelty and gaining an inch of land at any cost is because they have a similar philosophy of who is a human being.
What kind of philosophy again? Did you
It's
say?
an us versus them. If you're not a strict vegetarian
Oh,
Hindu who goes to the temple every day, you're not considered a human being. I used to go to the temple at least once a month in Austin, Texas, and they started disturbing me during prayers by calling me on my phone. After about 2 or 3 months of that, they started telling me, "You are not even a Hindu. Your mother was a Christian. So you cannot enter a temple. Stop going to the temple." That hurt me so bad. I actually stopped going to the temple. This was the Sai Temple of Austin. I loved going there. And a few months after I stopped going there, I found out that the head priest was dead. And my heart just sank. I was like, did they attack him too? But I never went back even once, not even to meet his widow, because they had told me not to go there. And I didn't know what they would do if I actually went and met her and told her about the gang stalking. So I just quietly left Austin without so much as telling the temple that I'm moving. And as soon as I moved here, within a week, the Indian stalker sent me a message. Hey, why don't you go to the temple in Indianapolis and tell them about your problems and ask for help, mocking me. So I haven't been to the Hindu temple here at all. They literally kicked me out of the religion because they said, your mom was Christian. You should not be going to any temple. So I never really was much of a temple goer as a kid, but I did read the Bhagavad Gita fairly regularly, like over and over and over again. And this painting behind me depicts the location of the Bhagavad Gita, the setting where Lord Krishna is advising Arjun on why he should pick up arms and fight against his cousins and his teachers and his friends because they have taken the dark path. So that has been my inspiration. I have survived a lot of humiliation rituals, a lot of mockery, because I have pretty much memorized the Bhagavad Gita, not in Sanskrit, but the gist of it, the message of it, by simply reading it over and over and over again. And it's all about how you cannot give up in the face of hostility from your own family when they're being evil. So that was my pillar of strength.
Do you think there's a connection between that message and the stalking that's happening? Because in America, few people would say don't give up, and the stalking isn't as prominent here. I mean, it happens, but not on that level.
I'm not sure how to answer that. I'm not sure I really have a well thought out opinion on it.
Well, I guess what I mean is, would the stalkers choose you because you won't give up, because it keeps the game going?
Yes, that is part of it. And this thing is prophecy driven to a large extent. One of the first things the Indian stalker told my aunt was that they had my astrological chart read by a group of priests, and they told him to leave me alone because the goddess Durga is rising in my astrological chart. But they overrode it because one of their favorite astrologers told them that I am also a bearer of the archetype of Draupadi, who is the woman they humiliated in this story depicted here, Mahabharata. And their calculations have told them that she currently lives in the US of A. So, two different priests told them two different things, and they went with the one that suited their narrative. They keep doing that. The Russians keep doing that too. So the Russians sent me messages that in a previous life, I was Putin's mom and I was Larry Page's sister, and that there's a prophecy that I would play a role in their in what goes on with their lives. So they just latched onto me because of what their psychics told them. They haven't told me all of the prophecy, but they said they read my blog with a magnifying glass. And one of my poems is called Star Girl. It's all of my all the women who inspire me. Star Girl has, I've written about 5 characters. One of them is Mother Mary, Mary Magdalene, Joan of Arc, Harry Potter's mom, Lily Potter, and that's my poem. And because I was writing about Mary Magdalene and Mother Mary, I also looked up the Bible for the Revelations because I was writing about King Solomon and the pentacle and the trumpets. So I thought, why don't I just weave in some imagery from the Bible? So because they were looking at my search, they looked at all the things that I researched while I was writing this poem. So they linked it to my fiction, where I also talk about reading the Revelations one day and having an aha moment about the Revelations. And they were like, she is the one from the Revelations, which is why they believe that I'm going to give birth to the next Messiah. I'm 59. So they then created the book of Sonali, and they created another one with one of my kids because they're like, okay, if you're 59, maybe one of your kids is the next Messiah. So that's why my kids and I are both being gangster. Because it turns out that while these people have a church and everything, they're actually a coven. So the coven wants to capture the next Messiah before he turns into the next Jesus. Because they're like, no Jesus, no problems. So I am probably one of the women that's being targeted. I'm pretty sure there are many people, there's like almost 9 billion people, 8 billion people on the planet. I couldn't be the only one they think is probably the mother of the next Messiah because, I'm 59, kind of babies. So they're hedging their bets. So they zap my ovaries and they're probably still actively looking at birth times on people's birth charts. And anytime there's a flashpoint, like there's a good psychic is really plugged in, which is why they're after the psychic community big time.
Or at least they found a story that seems to work for them for the moment.
Yes. So in me, they found too many things worth stalking. It was my dad's contacts in the Indian Army and the KGB and the police, which was very tempting. And then I just turned up at Google one day in a contract position. So I wasn't attracting too much attention with the higher ups because, there are layers and layers of Accenture and contract positions before they come to me. And they had completely dismantled HR. What they'd done was they had shipped out HR responsibilities to offshore offices. Those offices never communicated with each other. So let's say I was being sexually harassed with demeaning messages or requests for bondage and whatnot. If I Googled where is the form for the HR to make a complaint, that complaint would become a ticket for maybe someone in Malaysia. And she would read my complaint, she would probably flag it, and then she would go away from her desk at the end of her shift, and that ticket would die a natural death. So they challenged me. They said, yeah, go ahead, report to HR. And the people who were communicating with me through my work feed, they have mastered creating fake documents. So these so-called articles on Google and polyamory, Google's HR being shipped out to overseas offices, things like that, they would show up as an article on the Paris Review or the Slate magazine or the Globe. The backdrop would be stolen, the template would be stolen from a highly reputable magazine, and they would write in flowery language whatever they were trying to tell me in the form of an article. So they would get the message across to me. There would be dog whistles in it, only I heard. And there was always this plausible deniability that, hey, it's just, from the onion, it's a spoof, it's just a joke. We were just having fun with her. So they have mastered fake documents and they've mastered plausible deniability.
So I guess one complication is there's so much fake stuff out there that you can't find the real information through all the fluff.
Yes. And if I were to take a screenshot of that article, take it to the cops would be like, are you batshit crazy? Why are you reporting this nonsense to us? Because the cop can't hear the dog whistles in there. So I realized I would be working with a load of gaslight. And I would just have to systematically burn through it a little every day. That's why it's taken me 17 years to be heard, because I had to burn it off. I had to burn off the gaslight, one little incident, one phrase, one dog whistle, one death threat, one picture, one spoof at a time. And it was just happenstance. I got lucky that the person who decided to take this on and help me is really good at technology.
It sounds like you have to have quite a lot of resilience to get through all that.
Yes, I believe I've developed it. I didn't know I had it. I didn't know I would need it. I thought once I moved to Indianapolis, I'd have a normal life. They followed me here. And they have told me that even if I successfully leave Indy, they will find me again. So I have been asking, because everything's wired. I know at least once a month or so, once a week, or maybe people in Russia, FSB in Russia is probably, making notes and sending it up to their top people who I used to know, at least to let them know what's going on. So my last message to them was, guys, can you just push this person out of a window or something? You do that routinely. Like, it's part of your job description. I'm not asking you to do anything exceptional for me. I mean, it's just, part of being Russian. So I don't know if that went to them or not. But at least I made my emotions known about the situation. I'm tired. I'm really, really, really tired. So
Yeah.
what I have noticed is that these people have lost their humanity to a point where they're attacking children, pets, they're attacking their own families. Because the people who are at Google, who are saying that they will attack Larry Page, they are actually related to him through his mother. So if they can do that to their nephew, they can do that to me, they can do that to anybody. They have lost their humanity.
Well, hopefully they'll find some kind of solution eventually. I mean, the answer to somebody, I would hope.
They claim to be, one of them claims to be Satanist. He just straight up says it. He worships Beelzebub or whatever that name, some similar sounding name. He straight up, at least in the spoofs that he has floated up my Facebook feed, he openly says it. And they're very big on the Anunnaki. And they're very big on the Vatican is evil. So the Russian stalkers and the Indian stalkers have bonded over that. What is happening in India is that by the tens of millions, people are converting to Christianity. So there is a panic happening in the Hindu community that pretty soon they will become the minority. And because my great grandfather and his father were all priests, they are directing their rage at my family. Nobody in my generation or my mom's generation or her father's generation is a priest. So not one living person has actually brought anyone from the Hindu religion into the Christian religion. But because my forefathers were priests, they say that your family converted 200 people just in one town. They probably went into the church records and found out that when my great great grandfather was the pastor, 200 people joined that church. So maybe that's where they get their numbers, because one of the stalkers is from the same town as my family, as my mother's family. So they are holding on to a 200-year-old piece of information and using it against me kill my dad, and steal his property, which essentially sounds like an excuse for greed.
Yes, it does.
And it's the same thing with with the scam call centers. Are you familiar with the Indian scam call centers that have been calling elderly Americans, Canadians, and telling them they're from the IRS and they need to be paid $25,000 or $2 million, depending on how much that person has? There are elderly Americans who have lost millions.
Is that how it's funded? Is that where they get funding for all this activity?
Yes. 10% is reported, 90% goes unreported because people are embarrassed. So the 10% that is reported is 4 billion a year. So projection is that it's actually a 40 billion a year industry where they are siphoning off old people's bank accounts from the US, Canada, UK, Australia, English speaking countries that have shipped their banking information to India. And there are many Americans who are very wealthy. So these old people don't know technology and they end up losing all of that to hackers in India. This has been going on for about 15 years, and projection is it's a 40 billion a year industry.
I think that explains a lot to me as far as all the motivation for all these crazy phone calls I get. People wanting to buy my house and sell me a timeshare, sell my timeshare. I've heard that they call you and they're just trying to get you to say a certain phrase because they're recording it and then they can use that phrase later. Yes.
Yes.
And so it's a lot, like most problems, it's a lot bigger than I ever thought it was.
Yes, it is massive. In my communications with the Indian stalkers, I've asked them, why are you attacking Americans? Americans have done you no harm. So they come back with silly things like, one animal attacks another animal. It's just how nature works. So
Yes.
they don't exactly see Americans as human beings anymore. Greed has taken over.
Well, do you think that they're organized as a pseudo-religious sort of cult type of thing? Or is it just strictly about tricking people out of their money, controlling them, that sort of stuff?
Black magic became such a big problem in India that the Indian government outlawed it because they were going into human sacrifice, not just animal sacrifice. So they passed laws a few years ago. And when the people helping me used their technology to track what was happening to me, they said that I am being targeted with a load of black magic. And part of the reason they became fascinated with me was because they were doing all these death spells and I wasn't dying. So they were like, but why can't we? So I think these people are slightly dumb because I don't think you can kill a goat in India and expect a woman in America to die just because you wrote her name on the goat's body. But these people definitely are illogical, disjointed. Several of them have substance abuse issues. So maybe they live in a fog of substance abuse. And maybe greed has destroyed their logic to a point where they can't think straight anymore.
That sounds very reasonable.
One of the biggest things is just how did you manage to go through all this and keep your sanity, not have a nervous breakdown, not be completely paranoid, sleepless, etc.? How have you held up to all of this?
I've treated life not just a day at a time, but an hour at a time. And I know that the people who have been helping me are really good people, really, really good at what they do. There are people in India who are really interested in what's happening. They have not been able to speak up in public, but they have been keeping tabs. Likewise in Russia, likewise here. So I placed my trust in these people because I've known them since I was a kid. I just trusted them. And I trusted myself to be able to deal with it. Because if I could go, if through 2 years, I could go through one more year. If I could go through 10 years, I could go through one more year. So I just decided to trust myself, trust God. So I think trust was a huge portion of it.
Very good. Well, thank you for sharing yourself with us. Folks, this is our final episode with Sonali. We thank you for showing up and helping us with this, Sonali, giving us some more insight into what it's like to live as a targeted individual and some of your incidents and experiences with that. We are up on Spotify and YouTube as an audio. So you can get to it through TeutonicHealing.com, or you can go directly there and look at, if you're in YouTube, I think you can go to find Teutonic Healing and you'll find the audio there. And eventually, hopefully, we'll get back to doing video as well. Thank you so much for joining us, ladies and gentlemen. And until next time, go with the gods. Thank you for joining us on this episode of Shamanic Voices. Please like and subscribe so that you won't miss our coming episode, where we always try to have engaging and interesting topics and or guests. Thank you, and go with the gods.